Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Gennady Stolyarov II, and I am the chairman of the United States Transhumanist Party. In early 2019, in this building behind me, the Nevada State Legislature, the United States Transhumanist Party and its allies were able to achieve an important victory for the biohacking community in Nevada and in the United States. We were able to prevent an attempted ban on voluntary microchip implants. My presentation today will delve into the story of our activism at the 2019 legislative session, which enabled the successful amendment of Assembly Bill 226 in order to remove the attempted prohibition on voluntary microchip implants. Activism pertaining to Assembly Bill 226 comprised a significant portion of the activities of the US Transhumanist Party and the Nevada Transhumanist Party in early 2019. First, I will delve into the origins of Assembly Bill 226. It was introduced by Assemblyman Richard Skip Daly, a Democrat from Sparks, Nevada, on February 22, 2019. And the bill began in a rather innocuous manner by prohibiting any person from requiring another person to undergo the implantation of a microchip or other personal identification marker. However, the bill quickly morphed into a much more troubling piece of legislation. On March 4, 2019, Assemblyman Daly himself introduced Amendment number 46 to the bill, which would prohibit all voluntary microchip implants or participating in a program of voluntary microchip implants established by another person, and moreover would punish either receiving or administering voluntary microchip implants as a Category C felony for every day or part of the day in which such activities were undertaken. So this was quite troubling. So it is important to consider why it was that Assemblyman Daly proposed such a draconian step to altogether prohibit all voluntary microchip implants. And indeed, his proposal was driven by numerous misconceptions of how this technology, particularly implantable NFC or RFID tags, actually worked, both from Assemblyman Daly and from representatives of several interest groups who testified in favor of his amendment number 46. We heard a lot of fears of remote tracking of individuals, especially by governments and employers. And those of us who are familiar with the technology behind these microchip implants recognize that such fears are unsubstantiated. This technology is not capable of undertaking this kind of remote tracking, but nonetheless, that was the principal concern expressed by advocates of the prohibition. Also, many of them feared that these implants would be hacked and result in violations of individual privacy. Many of them expressed fears that the implantation itself could result in health and safety problems, including an alleged cancer risk. And there was a fear that these implants would skew economic arrangements in favor of large institutions such as employers and insurers. And if, for instance, an employer partnered with an insurer to set up an incentive program, for instance, for people to implant these microchips and somehow keep track of vital health statistics. These programs, while they would be portrayed as voluntary, would not be truly voluntary in some underlying manner, but would either be accompanied by rewards that are too good to refuse, or those who decline to participate could be subject to surcharges that would be too onerous for people to realistically accept. Now, all of these fears were rooted in a lack of familiarity with NFC and RFID tags and lack of awareness of the actual uses and limitations of these implantable microchips. Instead, commonplace dystopian fears, which are often spread through the popular culture, through dystopian science fiction, even through certain media commentaries, were projected onto technologies that these lawmakers and interest groups did not genuinely understand. The first time Assembly Bill 226 came to the attention of the transhumanist community was through the writing of R. Nicholas Starr, or Ryan Starr, who is a member of the US Transhumanist Party and who was the original founder of the Transhumanist Party of Colorado. On March 14, 2019, Ryan Starr published this article on the US Transhumanist Party website called Bait and Switch on Nevada AB 226. And he pointed out that The bill started out as a good idea, prohibiting required or coercive microchip implants, but quickly morphed into an attack on bodily autonomy. And the article was written quite eloquently. It pointed out that today's implants pose no privacy threat. They actually help maintain an individual's privacy and data security. And furthermore, he noted that these implants are extensively tested and biosafe, and he importantly articulated the need to respect bodily autonomy and self-determination of individuals' rights over their own bodies. So these are vital points that later on formed the crux of the transhumanist community's opposition to this amended version of Assembly Bill 226. As a result of Ryan Starr's work in bringing AB 226 to the transhumanist community's attention, we mobilized our resources quite quickly to respond to the draconian attempt to prohibit voluntary microchip implants. The day after Ryan Starr's article was published, the Assembly Judiciary Committee held a work session, and it did pass Assemblyman Daley's amendment, but with a significant incremental improvement to the definition of a microchip implant. And that definition was narrowed to exempt all medical devices, as well as non-transmitting devices used for medical or self-expression purposes. Also, the draconian consideration of each day or part of a day of the so-called violation as a separate offense was removed. And how were we able to achieve these changes so quickly? We circulated tens of posts via social media. We informed prominent transhumanists via email. Many of us submitted comments to the Nevada legislature and to the Assembly Judiciary Committee, and individual transhumanists reached out to Nevada legislators. Now, this victory, of course, was not complete because transmitting devices used for self-expression, such as NFC and RFID tags, were still at risk of prohibition. So the real battle to amend this legislation to remove these concerns would need to be engaged in at the Senate, where the bill would go next. Prior to the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing on Assembly Bill 226, Justin Waters, the legislative director of the U.S. Transhumanist Party, submitted a comment letter which made 4 points in opposition to the prohibition on voluntary microchip implants. Justin Waters pointed out that this prohibition is a violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act because it prohibited disabled individuals' safe access to microchips. It was unconstitutional under the non-discrimination provision of Section 1557 of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. It was a violation of the First Amendment rights to freedom of speech and freedom of association, and it was a violation of the right to freedom of contract. And this comment letter was circulated to the legislators. It was published on the Nevada legislature website, along with the other public comment letters on this bill. The next day, on April 26, 2019, at the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing, Anastasia Sin, a magician and transhumanist from Las Vegas, testified before the committee and informed the legislators and the public about what microchip technology can actually do, its benefits, and the practical limitations that prevented it from giving rise to the scenarios feared by the proponents of AB 226. And many of the senators in attendance had encountered this technology for the first time. They were quite astonished at the practical demonstrations that Anastasia provided. And this testimony indeed became one of the most discussed events of the 2019 legislative session. Now let us see an excerpt from Anastasia's testimony.
I have another chip here that I've programmed just to speak to you guys today to show you how I can make it say you pick the 3 of clubs or anything that I want it to say. So I'll scan that chip.
Hello, my name is Anastasia Sin. I am a magician in Las Vegas and I use microchip implants in my career. I also brought some with me so you can see how harmless they are. I programmed this chip to say this to you. I can program it over and over again to do things like unlock doors or safes on my phone or my computer. It also acts as secondary verification for when I log into Facebook. In this day and age, it's nice to have extra security by having a key that only you can access.
So just trying to give you some examples of things I can do. I have other chips that I scan and they open up YouTube videos. I can change them at any time to do whatever I want. It's not as sinister as you're making it out to seem. There is no way to track these unless you physically touch my body. Nobody controls these chips but me. Nobody programs them but me.
After the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing, it became clear to many legislators that they did not have enough information on these implantable microchip technologies in order to be able to make informed policy decisions, especially policy decisions of the severity that prohibiting these microchip implants would entail. So as a result, it was decided that it would be a good idea to invite some actual biohackers in order to showcase these technologies, explain how they worked, and explain their limitations. And we would like to extend our appreciation to Senator Melanie Scheibel, a Democrat from Las Vegas, who reached out to the transhumanist community and invited us to hold the first ever Cyborg and Transhumanist Forum, the first official transhumanist event held within the halls of a state legislature. We worked together with Ryan O'Shea, the host of the Future Grind podcast, in order to arrange the logistics for this event. And ultimately, in person, 3 of us, Anastasia Sin, Ryan Starr, and myself, were in attendance. And we were there for 8 hours. We discussed emerging technologies, life extension, microchip implants, and transhumanist philosophy with tens of individuals who approached us, including many legislators, lobbyists, and staff members of the Nevada State Legislature. We had numerous great conversations. We have an approximately 75-minute-long video that we recorded of the events at that Cyborg and Transhumanist Forum. You can find it for free online, and I would encourage you to watch it. And we were successful because as a result of our efforts, shortly thereafter, AB 226 was amended to remove the prohibition on voluntary microchipping. The amended bill only prohibited the coerced or required microchipping by governments, employers as a condition of employment, insurers, and bail agents. This is an image of a portion of Amendment number 767 to Assembly Bill 226, the second official amendment to the bill, which undid the damage of the first amendment. And you can see here all of the wording that would have prohibited voluntary programs for the implantation of microchips has been struck. Instead, the prohibition on requiring another person to undergo the implantation of a microchip was limited to an officer or employee of the state or any political subdivision thereof, an employer as a condition of employment, a person licensed to sell or provide insurance, or a person licensed to participate in a business related to bail. And furthermore, subsection 2 of section 1 now stated, the prohibitions of this section shall not be construed to prohibit a natural person from voluntarily electing to undergo the implantation of a microchip or other permanent identification marker of any kind or nature. So as you can clearly see, a major threat was diffused with this amendment. And a week later, on May 23rd, 2019, the Nevada Senate voted to pass the second reprint of Assembly Bill 226, once again limiting the bill's prohibitions to prohibitions on coerced or required microchip implants by the entities listed. So the bill ended up being far milder than Assemblyman Daley intended, and it has not interfered with the voluntary activities of biohackers in Nevada. In other words, we won, and this victory will likely hold because of all of the extensive efforts that were made to actually inform Nevada policymakers about what this technology is or is not able to do. Now, it's important to note, we were not alone in our efforts. We had several notable allies at the legislature who shared our concerns, who understood the danger of restricting individual liberty in the way that Assemblyman Daley had proposed, including Elisa Cafferata of the Nevada Technology Association, of course, our friend and ally in the transhumanist community, Ryan O'Shea, host of the Future Grind podcast, Senator Melanie Scheibel, who was quite impressed with Anastasia Sin's demonstration, who essentially invited us to set up the Cyborg and Transhumanist Forum. John Pirro, the Deputy Public Defender of Clark County, was quite concerned about the implications for the civil liberties on peaceful biohackers who would then be treated as Category C felons, and he testified articulating his concerns. And Rich Lee, the biohacking advisor of the US Transhumanist Party and a notable biohacker, was corresponding behind the scenes and connecting various opponents of this prohibition with one another in order to help coordinate these efforts. So both within the biohacking community and outside the biohacking community, we had many thoughtful, intelligent, articulate individuals assisting us in making sure that an egregious violation of individual liberties would not pass just because of widespread ignorance of what these technologies were and were not capable of doing. And there's a key takeaway here. Transhumanist insights and aspirations are not anathema to mainstream political figures, mainstream activists. People in mainstream politics are open to our ideas if they are communicated well, and if they speak to more widely shared understandings and priorities. And of course, the desire to respect individual civil liberties is not limited to the transhumanist or biohacker communities. It is widespread throughout society. And so those of us who approach political and policymaking forums in a spirit of integrity and transparency, who provide well-reasoned, well-crafted arguments for points of view that are consistent with transhumanist and biohacker goals, are likely to encounter some significant degree of success. Our efforts in preventing the prohibition on voluntary microchip implants in Nevada are hopefully just the beginning of a longer-term set of demonstrations of what we can do if we focus in an intelligent and thoughtful manner on policies that affect emerging technologies, not just in the realm of biohacking, but also in the realm of life extension research, artificial intelligence research, the rate of approval and the institutional mechanisms of approval for various medical treatments and devices. There are many political barriers to the advancement of the kind of vision that we ultimately seek to achieve, of a world free of disease, a world free of involuntary suffering, a world where individuals have morphological freedom and self-determination. They can live as long as they want. They can engage in the kinds of activities that they believe to be the most productive and fulfilling. The US Transhumanist Party is the political organization that will stand up for the rights of biohackers, as well as others who seek to bring these emerging technologies into being and into widespread public use. So please join us. It is absolutely free to join. Go to the website of the US Transhumanist Party at transhumanist-party.org/membership and sign up today. It takes less than a minute, and we would be delighted to have you within our network of policy advocacy. The more grassroots activists we have on the ground in various states, monitoring the activities of various state legislatures and other official bodies, the more readily we will be able to spot other similar pieces of legislation to what Assembly Bill 226 might have been, and take the requisite action to ensure that there are no unintended or intentional damaging consequences to our efforts. We could also influence policy in constructive ways to proactively remove certain barriers to the optimal pace of advancement for the technologies that we support. Thank you very much.